Right now, along Iran's southern coastline, there are radar dishes that don't exist anymore. Boats that were hidden away just got found, and a bunker built into a hillside just got turned into a hole with nothing left inside it. This didn't happen by accident. U.S. F-16s went in, found exactly what they were looking for, and took it out piece by piece. Late last night, Central Command shut the door on this operation and put it on the record. Dozens of targets along Iran's coast got hit in one continuous strike window. We're talking coastal surveillance sites, small boat staging areas, radar installations, and at least one hillside position that looked like it was built to hide either missile launchers or drone control trucks. This wasn't a random bombing run. Every target picked apart the tools Iran uses to watch the water and move things across it without anyone noticing. Here's why the coast matters so much right now. Iran doesn't just use its coastline for defense, it uses it to move money. Oil tankers slip along that coast every single day, some of them turning off their tracking systems so nobody can follow where the oil is actually going. Small, fast boats haul cash and supplies back and forth to proxy groups. Radar sites along the coast give Iran early warning if anyone from the outside is coming in. Take out the radar, and suddenly Iran can't see threats coming. Take out the boats, and the smuggling routes dry up. Take out the coastal defense sites, and the whole southern flank goes quiet. That's not one lucky strike. That's a plan. And the timing tells its own story. This wave of strikes came just 2 nights after the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps fired 5 ballistic missiles at a U.S. base in Jordan, trying to catch American and partner forces off guard. Every single missile got knocked down before it did any damage. Patriot batteries and partner air defense worked exactly the way they're supposed to. So Iran tried a surprise attack. It failed completely. And less than 48 hours later, American jets are hitting the coastline that Iran depends on to make money and move weapons. That's not random escalation. That's a direct answer. Iranian state media is already trying to downplay it, claiming there's no confirmed damage from some of the reported detonations near coastal cities and islands. But here's the thing about smoke rising over a coastal radar site: empty boat slips where hidden vessels used to be, and craters where a hillside bunker used to stand. Explosions like that don't happen because nothing was hit. When a government tries to tell you there's no damage, while their own state cameras are picking up blasts along the shoreline, that's not confidence. That's damage control, literally. Now, let's talk about why the coast specifically got hit this time instead of inland targets. Every strike package this size gets planned around a goal. Hit military command centers, and you slow down decision-making. Hit missile factories, and you slow down production. But hit the coast, and you go after something different, the actual lifeline. Iran's economy depends heavily on getting oil out through that coastline, often through methods that dodge sanctions completely. Every single day that route gets disrupted costs the regime real money, reportedly hundreds of millions of dollars in lost illicit oil sales alone. So when F-16s go after coastal defense and smuggling routes together in one night, they're not just damaging military hardware. They're hitting the wallet that funds everything else, the missiles, the drones, and the proxy groups getting paid to cause trouble across the region. This is where the F-16 earned its spot leading last night's mission. It's not the flashiest jet in the fleet, but it's the one that shows up every single time, carries a heavy weapons load, and gets the job done without needing anything exotic. Coming up, we'll break down exactly what was hanging off that jet's wings, why those specific weapons were picked for a coastal strike like this, and what it tells us about what the U.S. is planning next. Picture this. A fighter jet rolls out onto the runway, and before the pilot even taxis, the ground crew has already loaded 4 different types of weapons under those wings, each one built for a completely different kind of fight. That loadout right there tells you everything about what kind of night this is about to be. Let's start with what was actually hanging off that jet during the coastal strikes. Small diameter bombs, the kind with little wings that pop out mid-flight so they can glide toward a target instead of just dropping straight down. These things weigh around 250 pounds each, which sounds small compared to older bombs, but that's the whole point. A precise 250-pound bomb does the job a 1,000-pound bomb used to do, minus the collateral damage. 4 of them fit on a single rack under one wing. That means 1 jet, 1 pass, and 4 separate targets taken out in the time it used to take 4 separate jets to do the same job. Against a coastline packed with radar dishes, boat slips, and small bunkers spread out over miles, that kind of efficiency is everything. Then there's the laser-guided rocket system riding alongside those bombs. This one's a cheaper, faster answer to a specific problem. Small, fast-moving threats like drones and speedboats that don't need a massive bomb, just a precise hit. Instead of burning a rocket that costs a fraction of a full-size missile, pilots can knock down a threat for a small piece of what a bigger interceptor costs. Or multiply that across a whole night of drone activity along the coast, and the cost difference adds up fast. It's the kind of detail that never makes the news headlines. But it's exactly the sort of thing that decides whether a mission stays sustainable over weeks and months instead of draining resources in a matter of days. Now here's something worth sitting with for a second. The newer version of that same rocket system has a dual guidance upgrade, meaning the pilot only needs to point the laser at the target for a short moment before the rocket takes over and finishes the job on its own. That might sound like a small technical detail, but think about what it actually means in the cockpit. A pilot flying at night wearing night vision gear, staring at a targeting screen the entire time a rocket flies toward a target, is a pilot who isn't watching for threats around the jet. Cut that guidance time down, and suddenly that same pilot can look up, check the surroundings, and react to whatever else might be coming. That upgrade isn't just about accuracy. It's about keeping the person flying the jet alive long enough to fly the next mission too. Put all of that together, and the loadout used in these coastal strikes wasn't random. Bombs built to hit multiple hardened points in one pass. Rockets built to handle drones and small boats without burning through expensive interceptors. Guidance systems built to keep pilots safer while doing it. That's not a jet sent out to make noise. That's a jet sent out with a very specific plan for a very specific coastline. Before we get into what happens when that plan actually meets Iran's response, quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, an energy drink built with input from actual military pilots, made for people who need to stay sharp during long, high-stakes stretches of work, whether that's flying a jet or just grinding through a demanding day. If that sounds like something you'd want, check the link in the description. So the jets had the right tools, the mission had a clear target list, and the strikes landed exactly where they were supposed to. But Iran doesn't just sit back and take a hit like this quietly. Coming up, we'll get into how Tehran is trying to spin the story, what this coastal blow does to their oil money and shipping routes, and why the Strait of Hormuz keeps showing up in every single one of these conversations. Here's something Iran's state broadcasters won't say out loud. When smoke shows up over your own coastline on your own state cameras, and your official line is no damage to report, that's not spin. That's basically live streaming your own denial next to the evidence. Iranian state outlets came out fast after the strikes, running short segments about isolated blasts near a handful of coastal spots and islands, each time adding the same line, no confirmed damage, nothing serious happened here. But that phrase gets used differently depending on who's watching. Every time a coastal radar site goes dark, every time a boat slip that used to be full shows up empty in the next satellite pass, every time a hillside position stops showing heat signatures, the pattern speaks louder than any press release. State media can control the caption. It can't control what a camera actually picks up. Now let's talk about the number that actually matters here, money. Iran's economy leans hard on getting oil out through that southern coastline, and a lot of it moves through routes designed specifically to dodge sanctions, tankers going dark on tracking systems, cargo getting relabeled, small vessels ferrying product to bigger ships waiting further out. Every strike that damages a coastal defense site or takes out a hidden vessel doesn't just remove military hardware, it slows down that entire smuggling pipeline. Reports floating around suggest the regime is losing several $100 million a day just from disrupted illicit oil sales during periods like this. That's not pocket change for a government running on strained finances already. That's the kind of number that shows up in tense meetings behind closed doors, not on state television. Then there's the naval blockade angle, which keeps getting tighter. Iranian vessels attempting to move through key stretches of water are getting pushed back or intercepted more consistently. And every time that happens, it adds another layer of pressure on top of the coastal strikes themselves. Picture trying to run a business where your shipping routes keep getting blocked and your warehouses keep getting raided on the same week. That's roughly the situation Iran's revenue system is dealing with right now, except the warehouses are coastal facilities, and the shipping routes run through some of the most watched water on the planet. And that brings us to the Strait of Hormuz, which comes up in almost every single one of these conversations for good reason. It's one of the busiest oil transit routes in the world, and Iran has spent years treating it like leverage, occasionally threatening disruptions there whenever tensions rise. But leverage only works if the other side believes you're willing to actually use it and can absorb what comes back. With coastal defenses getting picked apart and naval assets getting boxed in more each week, that leverage looks a lot weaker than it did even a few months ago. Threatening to close a waterway hits different when the forces meant to back up that threat are dealing with their own losses along the coast. So what does Tehran actually do from here? History gives a pretty consistent answer. Deny the damage publicly, keep the rhetoric loud for a domestic audience, and quietly look for a smaller, harder-to-trace way to respond, whether that's through proxy groups or another attempted strike dressed up as retaliation. It's a pattern that's shown up before, and there's no strong signal yet that this time plays out any differently. Coming up, we'll shift into the global roundup segment, cover a couple of fast-moving stories from elsewhere in the world, and then dig into the bigger strategic picture tying all of this together, including where the next wave of technology fits into a fight that keeps evolving week by week. You made it to the global roundup section, and there's actually something worth talking about out of Eastern Europe this week. An F-16 pilot got scrambled fast after radar picked up what looked like a drone or missile crossing in from a neighboring conflict zone. By the time the jet got close, ground teams were already finding wreckage on site, fragments scattered across a field, no impact on anything critical. Officials said everything points to it being a cruise missile that either malfunctioned mid-flight or got intercepted before the fighter jet even arrived. Small story on the surface, but it's a reminder that these scramble calls are happening a lot more often lately across multiple regions at once, not just around Iran. Second story, and this one's more of a quiet development that didn't get much attention. Reports out of the Gulf region suggest coalition partners have been running more joint air defense drills than usual over the past couple weeks, combining radar coverage and interceptor coordination across multiple countries instead of each one operating alone. That kind of shared setup matters more than it sounds like, because a single country's air defense grid has gaps, but a shared grid between several allies closes a lot of those gaps fast. Worth keeping an eye on, because that kind of quiet coordination usually shows up before something bigger happens, not after. Now let's get into the part I think actually connects all of this together. The bigger picture nobody in the mainstream coverage seems to be putting side by side. Look at everything that's happened over just the last week. Iran tried a surprise ballistic missile attack that got fully intercepted. Days later, coastal defenses, radar sites, and smuggling routes get systematically taken apart. Coalition partners are running tighter joint air defense drills than before. And on top of all that, next-generation drone systems, the kind built to fly alongside manned fighters and spot threats before a human pilot even sees them, are getting closer to showing up in this exact theater. Put those four things next to each other and a pattern starts to form. This isn't just a reaction to one missile attack. It looks more like a shift toward reshaping how this entire region gets defended and monitored long term. Picture a jet, like an F-16, flying a coastal strike mission with a handful of advanced drones flying overhead alongside it, scanning for threats, spotting drone swarms before they're even a mile out, and feeding that information straight to the pilot in real time. That's not a future concept anymore. That's a system actively getting tested and refined right now. And every strike like the one on Iran's coastline gives planners more real-world data on how well it actually works. So where does that leave Iran? Weaker coastal defenses, a naval blockade that keeps tightening, a smuggling economy losing serious money every single day, and a coalition on the other side that's getting more coordinated and more technologically advanced with each passing week. That's not a position built for patience. That's a position that usually leads to more desperate moves, not fewer, because when the financial and military pressure builds up this fast, someone eventually feels like they have to respond, even if that response ends up making things worse for them. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Iran tries another surprise attack soon, or do they pull back and try to wait this out quietly? And with drone technology like this getting closer to the fight, do you think it changes how fast conflicts like this get resolved going forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I love seeing the different takes you all bring. If this video helped you understand what's actually happening out there, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and share it with someone who'd find this useful too. That's genuinely the biggest thing that helps this channel keep growing. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.